Imagine what we could do if we just made these billionaires pay their taxes like everyone else. We could use it to strengthen the Social Security and Medicare system instead of cutting them, or like Congressman Trump and Bo want to do. We could use it to help millionaires and millions of families.
This is Joe Biden, the resident of the United States. Biden loves to tell stories about growing up middle class, despite the fact that he's been a Washington elite for over half a century.
I grew up in a family like many of you where when grocery prices went up, the price of a gallon of gas went up, there was a conversation at the kitchen table. I mean, literally, not figuratively.
First of all, and we all know this, Joe Biden is a liar. Plain and simple. Let me explain. During Joey Biden's childhood, there was a distinct lack of volatility in the price of oil, which means that the price of gasoline was flat and price spikes never happened. In fact, oil prices stayed flat into Biden's late 20s. And according to the Department of Energy, within a 22-year period, the national average price for a gallon of gasoline rose a grand total of 9 cents. And yet, we're supposed to believe that the Biden family had deep conversations around a kitchen table about gas prices going up a penny? Give me a frickin' break.
A conversation about whether we'd have enough left over at the end of the month for my dad to be able to, used to say, have a little bit of breathing room.
When I was a kid 75 years ago, my dad would talk about breathing room. And this is a prime example as to why voters can't connect with Joe Biden. No one cares about Joe Biden's father or what he allegedly said 3/4 of a century ago.
Well, this past week, as Americans gathered around their own kitchen tables for Thanksgiving dinner, that was our goal, to give them a little more breathing room. And together, we made progress.
Right. Let's take a look at this so-called progress. Every year since 1986, the American Farm Bureau has been tracking the average cost of items regularly bought to create a Thanksgiving meal, including a 16-pound turkey, pumpkin pie mix, milk, and fresh cranberries. The Farm Bureau found that in 2019, a Thanksgiving dinner was $48.91. In 2022, it was $64.05, which is a 31% increase. But for Thanksgiving 2023, the cost went down by a whopping $2.88, which is still 25% more compared to before the pandemic.
In fact, as a share of earnings this Thanksgiving, dinner was the 4th cheapest ever on record. I want you all to know that.
So the cost of Thanksgiving dinner was the second most expensive in the history of the Farm Bureau's Thanksgiving dinner survey, but at the same time, it's the 4th cheapest ever on record. Makes sense to me. What's your problem?
Because wages are rising, this Thanksgiving dinner is the 4th cheapest ever as a percentage of average earnings.
Okay, I think this needs a fact check, so let's see how PolitiFact rates Karine Jean-Pierre's statement. Mostly true. Of course they did. We ran the math and found that although Jean-Pierre erred in describing the calculation, on substance, she has a point. So she made a statement that was not accurate, but they labeled it mostly true anyway. Let's continue. If this feels at odds with your lived experience, you don't need to show us your receipts. It illustrates something economists have long known. People tend to think about the prices they pay regularly, such as gasoline and groceries, without doing the mental math to factor in their own incomes. Oh, I see. If you think that prices are high, it's because it's all in your mind. Got it. So to most people, the 4th cheapest Thanksgiving ever as a percentage of average earnings means very little. So to make sure that we're all on the same page, let's dig into the data. According to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, the median usual weekly nominal earnings for an American working full-time is $1,118. The Farm Bureau says the average cost of a Thanksgiving meal is $61.17. So if you make $1,118 and the cost of your Thanksgiving meal was $61.17, that amounts to 5.47% of your weekly earnings, which means that the Biden administration is bragging that the average American is paying 0.43% less of their weekly salary for Thanksgiving dinner than last year or something. In other words, wow, thanks Joe Biden. And this is yet another example as to why the Biden administration's messaging on the economy isn't resonating with voters. Because A, most people have no idea what the this is supposed to mean, and B, because it's inaccurate. Now remember, the PolitiFact rated her statement as mostly true, despite the fact that she made a few errors in how she described the data. First, she said average earnings when she should have said median earnings. Average earnings and median earnings are very different. Second, she said that it was the 4th cheapest Thanksgiving dinner ever. However, 2023 is tied with 2018, so it's not the 4th lowest on its own. And third, Cringe can't say that it's the 4th lowest of all time because the Farm Bureau has only been conducting this survey since 1986. So even though she was technically wrong, PolitiFact gave her the benefit of the doubt. In other words, we know she made multiple errors, but so what? She's a Democrat. We know what she meant to say, so we'll give her a pass. So when it comes to historical figure Cringe Jean-Pierre, the media is just so forgiving. But were they ever so forgiving when it came to the greatest Republican press secretary of all time? Well, I think you know the answer, but stay tuned to find out. In late May 2020, after the death of George Floyd, mostly peaceful protesters in Washington, D.C. vandalized buildings, injured more than 60 Secret Service agents, and set cars on fire, as well as a maintenance building and St. John's Episcopal Church. And after 3 days of this nonsense, President Trump had had enough and forced the protesters to clear out of Lafayette Square. The media slammed Trump and accused him of ordering the United States Park Police to use tear gas and rubber bullets.
If the White House president and his team had to do it all over again, would you have gassed and pummeled protesters to clear the park so the president could have a photo op?
So let me first address no tear gas was used and no rubber bullets were used. So again, no tear gas was used, no rubber bullets were used.
Why making that distinction? Chemical agents were used.
Let me back up and
Episcopal priest who said she was gassed. Others say they were tear gassed in that area.
Well, no one was tear gassed. Let me make that clear. That's been confirmed by DOD and by Park Services as well.
And CNN's Jim Acosta is a liar. For starters, the park was not cleared out for Trump's photo op in front of the church, and I'll prove it. A June 2021 review from the Inspector General regarding the actions at Lafayette Park found no evidence suggesting that the United States Park Police cleared Lafayette Park so that the president could visit St. John's Church. In reality, the park was cleared out largely because these mostly peaceful protesters were attacking law enforcement. According to the Inspector General, USPP officers reported that some protesters threw projectiles, including bricks, rocks, caustic fluids, frozen water bottles, glass bottles, lit flares, rental scooters, and fireworks at law enforcement officials. Furthermore, a brick struck a USPP officer in the head, resulting in the officer's hospitalization. And despite all of the talk of misinformation, the media's narrative was that the US Park Police used tear gas and rubber bullets to clear out the park, which was not true. And yet, when PolitiFact fact-checked Kayleigh McEnany's statement on the matter, they deemed it mostly false. White House says officers didn't fire tear gas and rubber bullets on protesters. Why, that's misleading. Hang on. According to the Inspector General's report on the matter, there is no evidence that the USPP and the law enforcement entities operating under the Unified Command deployed CS gas during the clearing of Lafayette Park and H Street on June 1st. They also went on to thoroughly debunk any claim that tear gas was used to clear the park. So when Kayleigh McEnany said tear gas wasn't used, that is an objectively true statement. But PolitiFact jumped through hoops to label it misleading. The US Park Police press office told PolitiFact that officers used products made by the Pepperball Company, which contained the chemical irritant pelargonic acid vanilamide, or PAVA. PAVA closely matches the CDC's description of tear gas. So even though pepper balls are not tear gas, and they admit that tear gas wasn't used, PolitiFact is like, it's similar to tear gas, so it might as well be tear gas. Makes sense to me, what's your problem? Only a professional fact checker would label a 100% truthful statement as mostly false. And if you think that's ludicrous, here's where PolitiFact fact checks McEnany's statement that rubber bullets weren't used. Rubber bullets and pepper balls come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but the general difference is that rubber bullets are designed to cause pain, while pepper balls cause both pain on impact and the discomfort of a chemical irritant payload. So even though a pepper ball isn't a rubber bullet, pesky details like that aren't going to stop PolitiFact from smearing Republicans. Rubber bullets are different from the pepper balls fired by federal police, but both are fired at similar speeds. Both can cause extreme pain, and both are characterized as impact munitions. In other words, pepper balls aren't rubber bullets, but if you get hit with a pepper ball, it's like getting hit with a rubber bullet, so it might as well be a rubber bullet. Talk about moving the f***ing goalposts. So to recap, when a Democrat press secretary makes a statement filled with errors, which PolitiFact openly admits, it's mostly true. But if a Republican press secretary makes a 100% accurate statement of fact, she's a liar, mostly false. Which, ironically, is the best way to describe PolitiFact's content. Anyway, that's it for now. Follow me on X at Don't Walk Run, and while you're at it, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you next time, if there is a next time.